Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. Welcome back to another episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'm Annika Jackson, and I'm here with Cahill Camden. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Annika. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, I am super thrilled from our pre-conversation and looking over all of your vast experience on LinkedIn. You're currently the CEO of Digital Vision Media Group, an agency that helps Web3 and technology companies optimize for growth. We all know that's a huge industry right now. I have a lot of questions for you, but you also act as a fractional CMO. And we were just talking about your latest startup, Press Jockey, which I'm super excited about. I have so many questions. We could probably be here for hours. But before we get into those, I'd love to hear more about your journey into marketing and PR in the tech and Web3 world.
Sure. So I started out not in marketing and not in PR. I started out in sales. And I did sales for a digital marketing and traditional media company. So I sold advertisements into newspapers, physical, and then also digital media. This is a while back. And from that, I transitioned. So it was kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, but it was really intense sales. And so I transitioned from that into marketing for tech companies. And I started by doing a little bit of work for friends companies. And then that turned into more work. And then I thought, hey, I can do a full service marketing agency. Wrong move for me, at least. And eventually I figured out, we're really good at a few things. And so let's just double down on those items, such as press, content marketing, and paid media, and eliminate all the other things. Yeah. And so that's what our agency does. And then I do the fractional CMO work, strategy work, growth consulting, that type of thing.
Wonderful. I think that's one of the issues that we have when we want to start an agency. Like I started one and I was like, I'm only doing PR. And then I ended up having a team that had other capabilities and realized my clients needed other things. But it's really hard when you're trying to be all things to all people. So I applaud you for realizing early that, okay, you know what? We're not going to do it all. We're going to do these things, and then we'll build up partnerships with people who do the other things better than we do.
Exactly. I wish I had realized that earlier.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, because, part of it is like, once you realize that, then you can actually get better at the things you're already good at, right? Yeah. And so instead of focusing on your weaknesses, like maybe you're just okay at social media, which is, for example, my case. We're okay at it. Like we know it, we get it, but we're not in it. We don't love it. We don't have people on staff who just live and breathe social and that's their thing. And so we do have writers and content creators and authors and, people who just love creating content and press. And so why are we trying to focus on becoming better social media managers for our agency when we have the capability to go deep on what we're good at? So that's what we figured out. And so we started doing that more and more.
Yeah. And what was the transition like? I imagine, because I'm a huge believer in integrated marketing, I always preach about how everything used to be siloed, but now you really have to have everything work together. And especially for branding and thinking about the marketing messages, as a salesperson, you had to really understand brand and the marketing and how to message things. So that I imagine the transition would be easier to go from sales to marketing and PR versus the other way.
Yes, I think so. Sales and marketing often clash in larger companies. The sales guys and gals are pushing forward and selling the dream. And they're just like, yeah, sure, we can do that. No problem. And I know that because I was that guy. And marketing's like, no, this is not in alignment with brand, or no, we can't do that. And the tech team's like, what are you talking about? You said we could do this. This does happen. But understanding how to pitch a brand and how to communicate with customers, and also being on the front lines, hearing what customers are complaining about, what they're concerned about, what they want. This all can be translated into marketing speak and what you're doing in terms of marketing. And so if you understand the audience and you understand the brand that you're pitching or you're selling, then you can have a clear path to saying, okay, I know that these marketing traction channels are going to work. I know that social is really going to work for our audience. And if we're going to do social, here's how you do it. Or I know that PR is going to work, but it's not just any PR. We've got to be on these specific publications and these podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's how the transition kind of happened, right?
Yeah. And as fractional CMO, you helped transition Coinberry and Blockchain Foundry from zero to successful 8-figure exit pretty recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In the last year and a half, maybe 14 months, both of those companies got acquired for 8 figures, which is awesome. And so as fractional CMO, just let's stop there. What is fractional CMO? It's just like a regular CMO, so chief marketing officer, only I'm part-time, right? And so companies get the benefit of having all my expertise, insight, the breadth of strategic growth and ideas and how to manage a team, etc., but they don't have to pay the full-time salaries and all the rest, right? And so I was working with both companies. And so I built the strategy for marketing. I put the team together. I worked with internal team members, partners for our agency and our agency. So there's, 3 groups there. And I coordinate how we are going to grow the companies, right? Just like a normal CMO would. And so, I helped take Coinberry from like a really small startup. They had maybe 6 people, including 7 people, including 2 founders. So 5 staff and multiple dozens of people, and getting acquired by Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, his company, Wonderfy. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen a lot of disruption lately in the world of tech, in the world of finance, in the Web3 world. I saw that some friends of mine who worked with a specific VR platform, that platform space, I think, just went away. We're seeing all the disruption with the banks right now. So number one, I'm sure that you're pleased that you finished those projects before all of this other stuff started boiling up. But how is that also translated into your business? Since you live and play in the space every day, have you seen it affect how you translate marketing and PR messages, or has it not affected that level yet?
So I think that's an interesting question. The investing world and the banking world go hand in hand with the cryptocurrency world, or the digital assets world, digital assets being NFTs, crypto, et cetera. It actually hasn't been bad in terms of a business sense. And the narrative for various companies that I'm working for, it's still dependent on that brand. So for example, we've worked with stablecoins, we've worked with privacy companies, we've worked with exchanges, we've worked with NFT platforms, we've worked with large companies and startups who've raised money. And so I think when we get to PR, and now we can kind of shift into that if you want, but the message that we're trying to get out into the market through a PR, through a marketing capacity, it is brand related, but it also has a tone of what's happening in the general zeitgeist of media, right? So if we're seeing a lot of banking challenges, as we have seen as this podcast is being recorded over the last week, Silicon Valley Bank has gone down, et cetera, then great. One of our exchanges, we might shift the message towards, here's why we're safe, or here's why cryptocurrency is an interesting investment strategy, something that you might want to pay attention to. Investing advice, but it's something you want to pay attention to. And so we might shift the narrative a little bit, but that narrative has always been the same to that brand. It's just we shift how we're communicating that in the general landscape, depending on what's going on in the market and depending on where we see opportunities, right?
Yes, I asked that because I feel like last year and the year before, you heard about NFTs everywhere. Everybody was using NFTs as even a fundraising mechanism for their businesses, or a membership mechanism to raise money for their businesses. And I haven't heard as much about that in the last maybe 6 to 8 months. And interestingly, completely separately though, the conversation has moved more into the AI world. I mentioned to you before we got on, I'm a college professor as well as a marketing and PR specialist. And it's a big topic of conversation in terms of, is AI going to help teachers create better curriculums? How are we going to monitor if students are using AI to write their papers? But then I've also seen, we've been using AI for a long time, whether we know it or not. I mean, I use Fireflies as a note taker for a lot of my meetings, if I'm transcribing my podcast episodes, in other ways as well. And I'm even seeing like social media platforms moving towards having AI content for captions and for creating stuff,
Absolutely.
all of that. And then you're now starting to use AI in one of your newest launch. So I'd love to talk, I think there's a lot to unpack under Press Jockey. So if you'll explain what Press Jockey is, and then before we get into the AI component, I'd love to hear how it differentiates from all of the other things that are out there. Quoted, Harrow, Source Bottle, so many others to name. And then you have Cision, Prowly, Meltwater, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these different platforms where you can pitch journalists. And so I'll stop there and let you explain Press Jockey and why it's a better solution.
So what we're doing with Press Jockey, all those platforms are fantastic. We use them, and Press Jockey can integrate with them as well. So you do need accounts on those. But one of the things that we realized being an agency was there's a fragmentation of where you're finding these press requests. And so I say there's really 2 types of PR that every business should know about, every agency should know about. There's the outbound PR. That's what you pay agencies for. And that's why you have internal comms teams, internal PR managers, et cetera. You create a message, a narrative, a story, and you pitch your Rolodex, quote unquote, your network. You pitch publications and you try and get featured in different magazines, publications, blogs, podcasts, et cetera, right? So that's outbound PR. But there's this whole world of inbound PR where the media is looking for experts like you and they want you to help them create their content. And so what we recognized was that is a fragmented industry. So there are, like you mentioned, 10, 12 platforms out there. There's also Twitter. So hundreds of requests go on Twitter every day. And what we thought is, instead of going onto every single platform and sorting through hundreds and hundreds of requests on your email, why not aggregate that all into one spot? You still need to have accounts on those platforms, so you still need to do that. But why not aggregate it into one spot and make it easy for any brand to manage their inbound PR requests? And so we do that. We get PR requests from all around the web, thousands of them every week. We sort them by keyword and with algorithms. We integrate things like AI matching. And then you only get relevant PR requests for your business, and you can quickly and easily respond to them with templates that you've already created. You can customize those templates too. Templates that we've created, or in the next couple of weeks, AI. So you can then click on a button and have AI generate a response for you that you can edit, right? And you click a button, send, and like, boom, now it sends off to that journalist. And so we're just simplifying the process and making it a heck of a lot easier to manage thousands of requests every day so that you can get more press.
Yeah. And you were telling me that when you aggregated this and when you did a lot of the research, you're finding that a large percentage of the requests across these different platforms were duplicative. Right?
Yeah. So you're jumping into the secret, the dirty little secrets of the inbound press world. Yeah. So one of the things that we've done, and I've got to release a blog post or a video on this, is we analyzed almost 500,000 press requests over the course of a few months. And what we noticed was that the vast majority of them are duplicates. And when I say vast majority, I'm not talking 50, 60%. I'm talking like 85, 90% of all the press requests, sometimes even higher. 95% of everything that you see out there are duplicates. And so what do I mean by that? Well, someone might be able to create multiple accounts on any of these platforms, and then they post multiple times in different categories to try and find the best experts for their news article, for their podcast. Well, that's great for the media, for that media person. But it's terrible for you as a brand because you have to spend time to actually go through those press requests and figure out, is this something that matches my brand? And is it something that I want to respond to? And once you do respond, you might see that exact same press request, slight variations on it in a week, and then you respond to that again. And so you're just wasting time reading, filtering, sorting, responding. And again, Press Jockey makes that easy because we do it for you with algorithms, AI, and keywords. And so now all of a sudden you can save 80, 90% of your time and get better results. I
think this is a game changer, particularly for newer practitioners or people who are just starting out and want to be independent or work for small agencies, boutique agencies, because money is always an issue. When how many tools can we afford, right? And the time. I mean, I know for myself, I handle PR personally for a few people, but then I also have all my other work that I have to do. And so to go through the Harrow emails 3 times a day, to look through quoted and then decide, well, if I have the premium model, I only get to do 2 requests in a certain amount of time. You know, if I pay for it, it's going to cost X. And then if I aggregate all of the things that I'm paying for, it can be quite costly. So you said Press Jockey works in conjunction with these other platforms. Do you need to have paid subscriptions to these other platforms, or could I still have like the Harrow freemium model, the quoted freemium model, the source model, et cetera, as long as I have those accounts?
Correct. As long as you have those accounts, you can use the platform. You've got to have accounts on all the platforms to be able to respond. And if there's a paid request, we'd have to have a paid account on that platform to respond to that. But like you said, the thing that really saves a lot of time is, instead of you going through hundreds of press requests every day, we sort that for you.
Yeah.
Like, instead of spending an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours a day going to 6 different platforms, scraping through Twitter, going through all the Harrow emails 3 times a day, doing X, Y, and Z. Again, imagine coming into Press Jockey. All of that data is aggregated in one spot. You can spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes doing it, and you can reply with AI and customize your message a little bit, click send, and that's it. You're done. On to the next thing that you need to do. And so if you just think about it in terms of that time savings, right? Even at minimum wage, you're saving hundreds and hundreds of dollars every month. And my guess is, for most people and most agencies, most PR professionals, you're not getting paid minimum wage. You're getting paid far more than that. And so this saves saves you thousands of dollars a month. And this is just the start, right? Like there's a whole whack of awesome technology implementations that we're going to be doing with Press Jockey.
Well, I know you don't want to give away all the secret sauce right now, but I would love to hear what you're seeing as other trends and things that if we're not living every day in the Web3 and tech world, what are some things that we should be looking for down the road? And then I want to go back to the AI conversation and talk about how you think AI is going to keep changing the face of the work that we do as PR and marketing professionals.
Yeah, both really great questions. I think that we are seeing a big shift. If we're talking Web3, we're seeing a big shift in terms of the trust in the financial system, right? And we're seeing that cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, and there are some other cryptos as well, but it is definitely getting a lot more attention these days. And I do think we're going to see a shift towards blockchain, which is the underlying infrastructure of cryptocurrency. We're going to see that become more ubiquitous in finances for sure. That trend is something that I think if you're trying to build wealth, I think everyone's trying to do that. If you're trying to manage your money, I think everyone's trying to do that. You should definitely pay attention to the blockchain space.
Okay.
100%, just get basics covered. You mentioned NFTs before. I think we will see a resurgence of that in different capacities. So yeah, it was a bit of a bubble and it was super hot for a year or two while everyone was at home on their computers. I do think we'll see a resurgence in NFTs and other blockchain related technology. It's just going to take some time, maybe another 8 months.
It was ahead of its time and now it has to
exactly
a little bit and get people to catch up.
Exactly. And what's super hot right now, and for good reason, is artificial intelligence, AI, right? ChatGPT is all the rage.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know how many people know this, but ChatGPT was the fastest company to go from basically around 0 users to 100 million users.
Wow.
And it took them, TikTok, I believe 60 days to do it, which was unbelievable. Yeah. And ChatGPT did it in something like 20 days. So in 20 days, it went from nothing to 100 million people using the platform. And so you can understand why it's worth billions of dollars and why it's all the rage. It is a game changer. And to your question about PR and marketing and media, I do think every PR professional who wants to stay relevant in the future and who wants to become more future-proof should be using AI for their PR activities and learning how to work with AI in what they do. And so again, Press Jockey has AI in it. That's going to be released in a couple of weeks. So you can go there and you can, hey, I don't need to learn it too much. And just great, we're doing it all on the back end anyways. But I do think that it is an important trend to pay attention to if you're a PR professional.
Yeah. Well, and then on the other side, I'm seeing that some publications, we also know on the media side, a lot of publications have stopped publishing actual magazines and newspapers and have moved just to digital. But then I've also seen a lot of press recently about how some of those platforms are now using AI to write some of their articles.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'll have to have you come back on in like a few months to talk about what's going on in the world of AI now, because I feel like it's going to keep changing and keep progressing and fine tuning itself. And in my digital media class that I teach at USC, the last day of class, we went through some of the AI interactions people have had and how it was the article a few weeks ago about how the AI seemed to be having an existential crisis because it couldn't remember what it had said because it was programmed to not remember the chats previous to the one it was in right now. But it's really fascinating. And I don't think it's scary. I think it's more exciting to see how it's going to help improve our lives and what we can do with it next. And I still feel like, at least at this moment in time, you need to have that human touch. To your point, you said that in Press Jockey, you can have the AI create responses, but then we still have to go in and make sure that they're accurate and correct and representing our clients or our business correctly.
And that's exactly what I recommend, right? If you're using Press Jockey and you're using the AI integrations that we have to create ideas for responses, it should be thought of it just like that. This is an idea for a response that your assistant, the Press Jockey assistant, created for you. And now it's your responsibility to go in and tweak it for your brand, tweak it for your client voice a little bit if you need to, tweak it specifically for that pitch, and then hit send. But that assistant, the Press Jockey assistant, helped you write that pitch in 5 seconds. And now all of a sudden you can save a lot of time and you can have more impact for your brand or your clients because you can do more work for them, you can do better work for them, and you can focus on other aspects of their PR outreach that will help you and your brand, right?
Yeah. Now I want to go back to your role as a fractional CMO. When you start working with a company, is it usually when they're like in the early startup phase? What are some of the recommendations you make for companies that are launching when they're thinking about their marketing? And what are some of the recommendations and the mistake that you see them make that then you're like, no, let's do this. There's a process.
Got it. So 2 questions. What stage do I start working with companies? I work with startups if they've got funding and if they are ready to grow fast.
Right.
Like if that's what they really wanting to do, then great. We'll help them find product market fit, and I'll help them structure their marketing department, whether that's with our agency partners, internal stakeholders, et cetera. Like I build that, but you got to have funding for it because there is a cost to operations and to really pushing growth fast. Right.
Yeah.
I've also worked with larger companies. So we've worked with companies that have 60 plus million users, like Brave browsers, client of ours. And so, we worked with, very complex 1,000-person plus companies as well. Going back to startups, what are some of the things I recommend and what are some of the challenges that they experience, which is your second part of your question? I think this is one and of the same. One of the biggest things that I see most startups do, and I know that this is something I've got to constantly remind myself of when we're launching things like Press Jockey, is you can't do all of the marketing things at the same time. You just cannot. So let's focus. Let's choose which major traction channels you think are going to have the best impact, you think your audience is going to be on, you think are going to drive the most conversions for clients, users, whatever you want to call them, customers, and let's go for that. Let's then monitor it. Let's track it. You got to have the structure in place to do that. And then we will reassess after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and we'll pivot, we'll change, but we cannot do all of the things at once. And so what I find is a lot of companies say, okay, we were so excited. We've raised funding. We've raised whatever, $2 million, $5 million, whatever it is. Okay, we've got, and then they go through the list, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Right. We've got YouTube channels. We also are doing PR. We're going to conferences as well. We also want to do some content and we want to have our podcast and a blog. And what do you think about having a salesperson? I'm like, that's 10 things I just mentioned in the span of like 20 seconds. Like, how are you doing all of those things? And if you're trying to do it, you're splitting your attention, you're splitting your resources in terms of money, you're splitting your resources in terms of your team's ability to deliver creative assets, to focus, to respond, and it just doesn't work. And so what I often say is, almost all the time, is let's cut that down. Let's say, okay, there's some really great ideas here. There's some good ideas, and maybe these are kind of long shot ideas. And let's figure out what we're going to tackle first. And then there's always more structure that needs to go into place to actually monitor and measure results there. So analytics, you need to have internal data, email campaigns, drip campaigns. Like there's all sorts of things that companies are like, oh, we don't have that in place. And I'm like, okay, this is why I'm here. And once we do that, we focus, then we start to see results.
Yeah. You've explained so many complex ideas, or what non-marketing people would consider perhaps complex, so well, and really distilled them down to their essence. I'm laughing because even in the workforce development and education nonprofit space, same issues. People have a finite budget. We're coming in with a directive. We bring in all the psychographic, demographic information, we go through the whole process to create their campaigns, but then they want to do so much more. And this is our focus right now. If you get more funding later, then we can think about adding those things, but let's test these first messages and only, narrow it down to a couple of your programs, not everything. And then sometimes also see a dissonance between verbiage. So what we know in research is going to attract the ideal customer, consumer, end user, or journalist on the other side, and the language that we might use internally in a specific industry among a certain population. And so I think that's one of the things I also see, and I think it completely feeds into everything you're saying.
Yep. And working in the Web3 world and with engineers and developers, I completely understand what you're saying. It's like, oh, well, this works in this kind of way. And we've got these algorithms and these code that can, and I'm like, no one cares.
Yeah.
Let's just focus on a different message, or let's translate that speak into something that people will actually understand, because your target demographic is not other engineers or other developers. It's customers, and customers don't care that this is a 23.8% improvement over this algorithm. Like no one cares. Yeah. People, like going back to AI, they want to log into a system, type in their question and see results very fast. And that's what OpenAI got right. And that's why they just exploded. They got that right. Same with Google back in the day, right? A search bar, like the simplicity of things. And so I think to your point, getting that message down is super important.
Yeah. Well, and speaking about messaging, when it comes to brands looking for press, again, starting out, there's so many options, so many opportunities, so many ways you can get it. But if people are looking to get earned press media and exposure, what are some ideas and strategies that people can easily implement to get that ball rolling, even if they can't necessarily afford to hire an agency yet, or if they're not naturally a press person, they're not a publicist, they're not in the marketing world, so they're not going to know about Press Jockey and some of these other platforms?
Well, I think one of the best ways is to use a tool like Press Jockey.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, like I said earlier on in the conversation, there are thousands of requests that happen every week for people who are looking for experts like you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that does exist. The media platforms that you might get featured on will vary. I'm being direct about that. Like you'll get some very tiny blogs and some very tiny podcasts, but you will also get opportunities for Forbes. I'm a contributor to that. Forbes, New York Times, etc. Like there are some very massive publications as well. And so if you can start to respond to some of those, and again, you can use free tools like Haro. It's going to take you more time, but you can use a tool like that and start to respond. Once you get a little bit of traction, then you can use that to build more traction by saying, hey, I've already been on X, Y, and Z publications, podcasts, etc. I would love to be on yours as well. And that snowball starts to grow in size and speed. And that snowball is PR and it starts to move faster and faster. And then all of a sudden you're getting more opportunities, right? There's obviously some nuance to that, like building your media kit, which Press Jockey does as well. We're releasing that in the next month. But you get my point. It's like start small and then scale up from there, but definitely start.
Thank you for saying that. I think a lot of people think immediately, I'm going to be in New York Times. I'm going to be on the cover of Forbes or Inc. or people have really grand ambitions. And sometimes you get lucky and you can get that. You have a really great story or you're exactly the expert they needed at that moment in time. But more often, it's exactly what you're saying. So.
Yep. And I like to be direct about it, like even with a tool like Press Jockey, right? I always say, think about it as a numbers game. You're going to send 100 responses, 20, maybe 30 people will get back to you. Out of those 20, 30 people, you're going to have conversations, like continued email conversations, maybe get on a call with 10. Out of those 10, maybe you'll get placed 1 to 3 times. Okay. Fine. That might be a month. But if you get placed 3 times in a month and you do that again the next month, now you've been placed 6 places. And now you can use that to get placed in the next month. Maybe you'll hit 4 or 5. And also maybe you'll get on bigger and bigger publications. And now you're starting to move down the press track, as it might be called, faster and faster and faster. And that is how press really works. Again, like you said, there are the rare occasions where you're in the right place at the right time. You have the exact right brand personality and like it all lines up and like, boom, you're in Forbes. But most of the time, that's not the way it works, right?
Wonderful. Well, this has been a really great conversation. We've covered a lot of bases today. I usually don't promote my guest companies as much as we've been talking about Press Jockey, but I'm really excited about it. And I know that it's going to be a great tool for me. And I really want to encourage everybody who's listening who is in the PR world or who is a small business or brand who wants to understand PR better to sign up so that when it opens up, you can get in.
Yep, it's ready to go right now.
Awesome.
Yep.
Can change everybody's lives.
Yep.
So Cahill, are there any other things that you wanted to share with us today?
I think one of the important points, and I just touched on it, and I say this to all my clients, let's start small and we'll scale up from there. And I think a lot of people get intimidated by press. Mm-hmm. What am I going to say? I'm not really an expert. My company's not making $100 million a year. It's not making $1 billion a year. It's not making 1 million, like whatever the reasoning or justification might be. And I will always say, start small and scale up from there. You don't need to have it all figured out. You do need to start though, because in 6 months from now, when you're saying, hey, I would love to be on the cover of Forbes, or I'd love to be in an article on Forbes or the New York Times or TechCrunch or whatever it might be, Glamour, you're not going to have that opportunity if you didn't start 6 months ago. And so you got to start small and scale up as you go. And you'll work out all the kinks and you'll work out all the marbles of how you say things and you'll work out all the little things, but start small and scale up. And so that's kind of how I'd like to end it.
Awesome. And do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you'd like to share with us today?
One of my favorite quotes is "Never give up" by Winston Churchill. That doesn't necessarily mean not to ever quit what you're doing or to pivot, but it means never give up. Like never give up on yourself, never give up on your idea of being an entrepreneur, on, traveling the world, whatever it might be, becoming fit, becoming healthy, more intelligent, like just never give up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been a really beautiful conversation. And thank you to our audience for coming back and listening to another amazing expert share some knowledge with us today. I'll have all of Cahill's information in the show notes as well, so you can learn about his various companies and follow him on socials. And with that, I'll be back again in a few days with another amazing expert. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.